Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. So today we're really going deep diving into this fascinating book, How, by Dov Seidman.
Yeah.
And basically it's all about how success in today's world,
Right.
it's not just about like what you achieve anymore, but how you get there, right?
Exactly.
All about those values, those principles. It's definitely making me rethink a few things.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it really makes you realize how much the business landscape has shifted, you know? I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We've gone from like tangible assets, like land and capital being the drivers of wealth,
hmm
to, well, information. Right. That's the real gold mine now.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you can really see that like when you look at the rise of startups
Right.
and global networks, remote work,
Yeah.
it's not about those like fortress-like companies anymore.
Right.
It's all about these like intricate webs of collaboration.
Exactly. And Seidman, he uses this brilliant analogy to illustrate this, like
Okay.
the chessboard, right?
Right.
Each piece has its own like strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
but it's how they work together that determines like the outcome of the game.
Yeah. No single piece can win alone. That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. It is a really powerful image.
Mm-hmm.
But then this interconnected world, it's great, but it
Yeah.
also comes with its own set of challenges.
For sure.
Like how technology,
Oh, yeah.
it's this double-edged sword
Absolutely.
when it comes to communication.
Yeah.
On one hand, we're more connected than ever,
Right.
but it's also led to some, well, pretty messy situations.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at like the HP scandal, for example,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It highlights how like technology's transparency can really backfire. Patricia Dunn, you remember the
Right.
former chairman,
Yeah.
authorized spying on board members.
And it all happened.
And it all unfolded so publicly. And why?
Yeah.
Because of technology.
Yeah.
They were too focused on the legal, can we do this, instead of the ethical, how should we do this?
Right.
And well, it ultimately led to their downfall.
It's true. It seems like sometimes the speed of technology
Yeah.
can actually hinder,
Right.
thoughtful communication.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure we've all felt that pressure
Yeah.
to respond like instantly to messages and emails.
Oh, yeah.
And you end up like sacrificing, a really well-crafted, thoughtful message
Right.
for the sake of seeming responsive.
It's true. And, there was a Pew study that found
Oh, wow.
that while instant messaging, right, it can boost teamwork,
Okay.
it can also create distractions and stress.
Uh-huh.
Like, we're constantly bombarded with information expected to be on all the time.
I feel that.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you really appreciate like the art
Oh, yeah.
of a well-considered letter or memo.
Absolutely. Like taking the time to craft
Yeah,
a real message.
for sure. It feels like we're always playing catch up,
Mm-hmm.
trying to navigate this constant stream of information.
It's overwhelming.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, how do we even begin to make sense of it all?
That's where Seidman's argument, right, about shifting from like a rules-based mindset
Okay.
to a values-driven approach, I think that's where it comes in.
Okay, yeah.
He suggests that we need to move beyond simply asking, can I do this?
Uh-huh.
And start asking, should I do this?
Okay. So, instead of just blindly following the rules,
Right.
we need to actually consider like the ethical implications
Exactly.
of our action.
Exactly.
Right. But how do we define those shoulds?
All right.
Is it like purely personal, or is there something like
Right.
more universal at play?
That's where it gets really interesting, right?
Okay.
Because Seidman, he dives into some fascinating research from like neuroscience and evolutionary anthropology, suggesting that, and this is wild, that we might actually be hardwired for ethical behavior.
Mm.
Like, take altruistic helping, for example.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that even toddlers, like barely able to speak, will instinctively help a stranger
Wow.
complete a task.
I would not have guessed that. I always thought like altruism was a learned behavior.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. So are you saying like we're born?
It's a compelling idea.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's not just altruism.
Yep.
Think about trust, for example.
Okay.
That's like another cornerstone of Seidman's argument.
Right.
Remember that experiment, The Trust Game?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
By Paul Zak?
Yeah.
Where like two strangers are given money,
Right.
and one person can choose to send a portion to the other, knowing it will be tripled.
Okay.
The receiver can then send some, all or none of that tripled amount back.
It's all about gauging that trust.
Exactly.
So did people like mostly act in their own self-interest?
You would think, right.
Yeah.
But You might be surprised to hear that they didn't.
Oh, really?
Most people sent some money,
Oh, wow.
and an even higher percentage sent money back.
Okay. Yeah.
And what's really fascinating is that this act of trusting
Yeah.
actually triggered the release of oxytocin.
Oh, wow. The love hormone.
Right.
Interesting. So, like, there's a biological basis for feeling good
It seems like it.
when we trust and are trusted.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
Seidman suggests maybe our brains are actually wired for connection and
Yeah.
collaboration.
It's really interesting. So I guess that leads to the question of, like, how does this
Right.
biological predisposition towards values, how does that play out in the business world?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what we really need to explore.
That's a great question. I'm really eager to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
But I think first we need to understand like where these values actually come from,
Yeah.
and how they can, guide us in making those really tough decisions that we all have to make.
Absolutely. Because it's not as simple as it sounds, right?
Right.
This idea of shifting from can to should,
Yeah.
it's a lot more nuanced than that. I mean, it's not just about like following the rules, or
Yeah.
even adhering to like a predetermined set of values. It's about cultivating a deeper understanding of the how behind our actions.
Okay. It sounds like Seidman is advocating for like a more conscious
Yeah.
and deliberate
Absolutely.
approach to success.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just achieve something.
Mm-hmm.
It really matters how we get there.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly.
Right. So, that's where things start to get really, really interesting.
Okay.
So let's explore how this how philosophy, let's see how it plays out in practice.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right.
Okay, so it sounds like, we're kind of hardwired for this.
Right.
This connection and collaboration thing.
Yeah.
But we still see so many businesses out there operating from that
I know.
like old win at all costs mentality,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that, success isn't just about the bottom line.
Right.
It's about building something like sustainable, right? Something with integrity.
Okay, yeah.
And Seidman, he argues that we need to move beyond that. That
Yeah.
can I do this mentality
Mm-hmm.
and really embrace the should I do this?
Okay.
And even more importantly, like the how should I do this?
Okay. So instead of just focusing on whether something is like permissible,
Yeah.
we need to consider like the ethical implications,
Right.
the ripple effects of our actions.
It's about the impact.
Yeah. It's about taking responsibility for the how.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our choices, like they impact others, not just ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
And this is where transparency becomes so crucial.
Transparency. Okay. So that word gets thrown around a lot, but
It does.
what does it actually like? What does it look like in a business context?
Well, I think it's about being open and honest in your interactions, right?
Okay.
Both internally with your team
Yeah.
and externally with like your customers, your partners.
Uh-huh.
It's about clear communication,
Okay.
acknowledging mistakes,
Yeah.
and being willing to be held accountable.
It sounds like a vulnerability thing almost.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of risky in the business world?
Well, there's always a risk, for
Yeah.
sure. But Seidman argues that
Yeah.
the benefits of transparency far outweigh the risks, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're open and honest, you build trust.
Uh-huh.
And as we've been talking about, trust is the foundation for
Yeah.
collaboration,
Right.
for innovation,
Right.
and ultimately for sustained success.
I'm thinking of like companies like Southwest Airlines,
Yeah, great example.
They're known for their company culture. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And they're also like pretty transparent in how they operate.
They are.
I feel like there's a connection there.
Oh, absolutely. They empower their employees.
Yeah.
They communicate openly.
Right.
And they're not afraid to admit when they mess up,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And that fosters like a culture of respect
Okay.
and trust. And that translates into loyal employees
Right.
and loyal customers.
It's a win-win.
Exactly. A win-win.
Yeah. So it seems like, I don't know, a lot of this boils down to leadership.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
The leaders really set the tone
absolutely.
for the entire organization.
Seidman really emphasizes that like leaders need to, walk the talk.
Okay.
It's not enough to just talk about values.
Right.
They need to embody them
Mm-hmm.
in their actions.
So lead by example.
Precisely. Leaders need to be authentic.
Okay.
They need to be transparent, and they need to be committed to doing the right thing even when it's hard.
Yeah.
They need to create like an environment where people feel safe to speak up,
Right.
to share ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and to even challenge the status quo. That's how you foster a true how culture.
Okay. So this all sounds great in theory,
Right.
but, you know, how do we actually measure the impact of this?
Right.
Can we actually, like, quantify the benefits of being ethical?
I mean, that's the question a lot of people ask, right? Like,
Yeah.
can we really put like a number on it?
Right.
And while it can be challenging to directly measure, like the ROI of ethical behavior,
Yeah.
there's a growing body of evidence
Right.
that suggests a strong correlation
Okay.
between ethical conduct and long-term success.
What kind of, like, evidence are we talking about?
Well, for example, like studies have shown that companies with strong ethical cultures,
Okay.
they tend to have higher employee morale,
Makes sense.
lower turnover rates,
Right.
and stronger customer loyalty.
Yeah.
They're also less likely to be involved in like scandals
Yeah.
or legal battles, which can be incredibly costly,
Yeah.
both financially and in terms of reputation.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's about, like, doing good business.
Exactly. When companies prioritize ethical conduct,
Right.
they're actually creating like a more sustainable
Right.
and resilient business model.
They're thinking long term.
They are. They're building trust with their stakeholders,
Uh-huh.
and that trust translates into tangible benefits.
Okay. So it really does seem like this how concept,
Mhm.
it kind of boils down to something pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Treating people right.
I think at its core, yes. It's about recognizing that, we're all interconnected
Yeah.
and that our actions have a ripple effect.
We're all in this together.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about creating a world where success isn't just about like individual gain,
Okay.
but about like shared prosperity and well-being.
This is inspiring stuff.
It is.
But I imagine some listeners might be feeling a little overwhelmed.
I can see that.
Like, where do we even begin to
Yeah.
make this shift?
Well, it's, it can feel daunting.
Yeah.
But remember, even small changes
Right.
can have a big impact.
Do you have any, like, practical tips for getting started?
Absolutely. Start by like reflecting on your own values.
Oh.
What's important to you?
Right.
How do you want to be perceived
Okay.
by others?
Uh-huh.
And then think about how those values can like guide your decisions and actions in your everyday life.
So it's about being more mindful,
Yeah,
more intentional
absolutely.
in how we approach the world.
It's a way of being.
Okay.
And it's also about like having the courage to speak up
Yeah.
when you see something that doesn't align with your values,
Mhm.
even if it means like challenging the status quo.
It sounds like this shift from what to how,
Yeah.
it requires a real shift in mindset, right? A willingness to embrace, like, a new way of thinking about success.
For sure.
It's a challenge,
It is.
but an exciting one.
I think it's a challenge worth taking on.
Yeah.
As Seidman reminds us, the how is always up to us.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. It really does feel like we're at this turning point,
I think so too.
It's not enough to just talk about values.
Right.
We need to actually see them, like, in action.
Absolutely. That's where the rubber meets the road. It's about taking those ideas
Yeah.
and turning them into like tangible changes in our behavior and our systems,
So where do we go from here?
Right.
What's, like, the first step? How do we actually implement this whole how philosophy?
Well, Seidman, he has this interesting suggestion.
Okay.
He says, start with a simple question.
Okay.
What's your how statement?
A how statement. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mission statement, but it's different, right? It focuses on the values and principles that are going to guide your actions,
Right.
not just your goals.
I like that. It's about, like, defining the why behind the what,
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with your values, making sure that your how is really in sync with your why.
This has been, really such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have whole new, like,
Yeah,
framework for thinking about success,
that's great to hear.
It's not, it's not about the end goal all the time. It's about the journey.
It is. It's a journey, not a destination,
Yeah.
but it's a journey worth taking.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into what's the one key takeaway? What do you want our listeners to really walk away with?
I think the most powerful message Seidman leaves us with is this. We actually have the power to choose how we show up in the world. Like, we're not just cogs in a machine, right? We have agency. We can choose to be guided by our values, to
Yeah.
build trust, to act with integrity, even when,
Yeah.
when we're faced with pressure,
Right.
uncertainty, all of that.
It's a call to action, really.
It is.
A challenge, like to be better, not just for ourselves,
Right.
but for the world around us.
I think that's a great way to put it. And, if as Seidman suggests, we're really hardwired for this connection and values-based thinking,
Right.
then maybe, just maybe, tapping into those inherent strengths
Mm.
is the key to unlocking not just success, but a more fulfilling, a more meaningful life.
Wow. That's an incredible thought to leave our listeners with. So,
Yeah.
if you're out there and you're ready to explore these ideas a
Yeah.
little bit further, I highly recommend checking out How by Dov Seidman.
Great book.
It's a thought-provoking read.
It is.
It really challenges us to rethink what it means
Yeah.
to succeed in today's world.
It really can change the way you see the world
Yeah.
and your place in it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah,
on this
sure.
deep dive into How. We'll be back next week with another fascinating exploration
Looking forward to it.
of ideas that matter.
Hmm?
Until then, keep diving deep, and remember, the how is always up to you.